high hopes.
There were a number of people on the boat. Many of them were family groups, and there were some small children, and then there were older children like me celebrating Mother's Day with their mother.
It would be a Mother's Day they would never forget. Less than a mile from shore, and 5 short minutes from the harbour, they were already in deep water. Below the boat, a vast rock trench, in places deeper than the Grand Canyon, runs for about 60 miles. Much of what is down there remains unknown. At 9:57 a.m, Teora's first mate spotted something ahead. From over a mile away, it was impossible to tell quite what that something was.
We saw some splashing ahead of us, and oh, I was so excited. I said, hey, great, we've got something ahead of us.
All that was clear was that that something was splashing on the surface, and that something was big. As the boat drew closer, the feeling of excitement on board grew.
Everybody got charged up and started to move forward, and they were real excited.
Slowly the activity began to take shape. Tall black fins rose from the waves like sails. They were over a metre high. Only one animal had dorsal fins that big. Orcas, otherwise known as killer whales.
I was ecstatic when we heard that there were orcas out there. I've been waiting years and going on these trips for years, waiting to see the orcas.
This was something special. Although orcas were known to frequent Monterey Bay, sightings were very unpredictable. Even Steve Johnston, a local veteran whale watcher, had never seen the bay's top predators.
When I heard that there were orcas out in front, I got really excited because I've never seen them before in the wild. This was my very first time, and that wasn't one of the things that I had on my list of expectations.
By 10:03, the whole boat could clearly see the killer whales.
Everybody went running to try to get a view, and I got up near the front of the boat. And we could see a lot of activity in dorsal fins and some jumping and thrashing around, so they were pretty active.
At first, the children on board were excited. It looked like the orcas were playing.
We saw lots of thrashing, lots of killer whales jumping.
They were acting kind of rambunctious and jumping out of the water and coming down again.
From over 100 meters away, the activity looked innocent enough. Even to Teora, who had been on this water more often than anyone else on board.
Quite often when they get together, they will just kind of gather and play, and I thought that's what we might be seeing up ahead of us.
But as she edged the boat closer, it became clear that this was not play. The time was 10:05.
But I slowed down, and this activity started to take on a more sinister tone. There was a blow that erupted from the gathering of killer whales that was far too big.
When any marine mammal comes to the surface to breathe, it exhales a spout of gas and water into the air, just like a human snorkeler. The size of the spout is related to the size of the animal. And this exhalation was far too large to have been caused by a killer whale.
That blow was way too big, so clearly it was not coming from killer whales.
A fully grown male orca can be up to 9 meters long and 6 tons in weight. But the exhalation Teora had seen belonged to something much, much bigger. Something that dwarfed her boat. Whatever was underneath them, it was huge. Teora tentatively inched her boat closer to try and get a better look at what was in the water. It was 10:07.
Then as we got closer, I could see what it was. it was a California gray whale cow.
The California gray whale is one of the largest animals on the planet. A fully grown female, known as a cow, can easily weigh up to 35 tons, the equivalent of 11 female African elephants. The barnacles encrusted on the upper surface of this creature's head positively identified it.
And then when we got a little closer, somebody yelled, I think it was Heidi that first realized that there were gray whales in the area, which is what had attracted the killer whales.
Grey whales and killer whales are not related. Orcas are in fact a type of dolphin. They are known as killer whales not because they are whales, but because they are whale killers.
This was the attack that I never wanted to see.
One organization is specially equipped to reveal the dark mysteries of Monterey Bay. Marine biologist George Matsumoto had heard of killer whale attacks on grey whales, but even he had never seen one.
Even here at the Research Institute, where we'll spend 300 days a year on 2 different ships out there, we've never actually observed a killer whale attack from our vessels.
Up until now, reports of orca attacks were the stuff of legend, rarely glimpsed even by those who studied these animals. But the Mother's Day encounter would provide scientists with detailed video evidence of an attack from almost start to finish. 10:15. 18 minutes after they had first sighted the orcas, Tiara spotted another body in the water.
My goodness, you guys, look off the left side. Look over there.
In the midst of the mayhem, there was another, smaller participant.
And then we are told by Heidi that the orcas are attacking a gray whale and a baby.
Grey whales only raise one infant at a time. Judging by the size of this calf, it was around 3 months old. There was nothing anyone could do. The passengers could only watch in horror and fascination.
You don't really want to watch, but you have to because you want to know what's going on.
No, your mother can understand.
Truly, this was one of the most powerful things any of us on board had ever seen.
The orcas are so tough. But see how they're going after its blue tips and the little pectoral flippers?
The killer whales were thrashing their tails at it.
The killer whales were trying to prevent the calf from breathing. They were trying to drown it.
One swam up over its head and pushed down and was pushing it down. And you can't, these are mammals. They have to breathe.
A grey whale can hold its breath for up to 15 minutes.
Oh my God.
But not when it is being repeatedly forced underwater.
There was a moment when it tugged at my heartstrings that this mom was, fighting for the life of her baby.
Grey whales are ferociously protective parents, but they have little defense against a prolonged group attack. But how had these two mighty adversaries come together so close to the harbour? Environmental journalist Dick Russell knew that grey whales were only ever fleeting visitors to the area.
They've just come from one of 3 lagoons in Baja California where the baby whale was born probably 4 months earlier. And they're about to head 6,000 miles all the way to the Bering Strait between Alaska and Russia.
Grey whales have one of the longest migrations of any mammal on Earth. It's a massive 14,000-mile trip from Alaska to Mexico and back again. Throughout their great voyage, the grey whale sticks to shallow water, hugging the coastline. They use the kelp beds and surf noise to disguise their presence from predators. But in Monterey Bay, the kelp beds run out. They have little choice but to break cover and run a 23-mile gauntlet across open water. Straight over Monterey's unique submarine canyon.
Here in the middle of the bay is the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, and also right here is the start of the Monterey Submarine Canyon. And the Monterey Submarine Canyon is a phenomenal feature. It cuts the bay in half. It goes away from shore 100 kilometers, reaching a depth of almost 4,000 meters by the time it hits bottom.
Even if the whales stayed in the shallows, they would still have to cross the deep water of the canyon. But perhaps there's another reason why the whales take a shortcut across the mouth of the bay. This place was once home to a much more formidable predator. Could grey whales retain a sixth sense of Monterey Bay as a place of danger?
100 years ago or more, the main predator of gray whales was still human beings. Gray whales were almost driven to extinction in the 19th century. They were hunted mercilessly. In the lagoons in Baja California, right there in their birthing grounds, in places like Monterey, the baleen was used, the oil was used. It was really just a bloodletting.
After the Californian grey whale's breeding grounds were discovered in the 1850s, the animals were hunted to near extinction. By the 1920s, only a few hundred individuals remained. The industry became uneconomic, and whaling in Monterey Bay ceased. But could memories of those dark days live on in the minds of today's migrating grey whales?
So maybe there's some kind of memory, who knows, a genetic memory in the whales, some of the whales that says we don't want to get too close to shore.
There may be a more pressing reason for the mother's risky decision to take a shortcut. Desperation born of hunger.
The mother probably hasn't eaten since she was last on the feeding grounds, which was way back last fall, last October. And now here it is May, and she's running maybe a little late, and her energy supplies are dwindling perhaps more than she wants them to be. And so she's decided that she's got to go across that canyon to save time.
The strategy has backfired. It's 10:41, 38 minutes since Teora's boat arrived at the scene, and the mother and calf are in obvious distress. This rapid blowing is the whale equivalent of panting. They are, quite literally, gasping for air. It doesn't help that at this stage of their journey, the mother is significantly weakened. One man who understands more than most about the rigors of their epic journey along the coast is marine biologist Wayne Perryman.
Their tanks are starting to run on empty. You can see the females are very, very thin. They're lactating and feeding their calf while they're fasting, so they're pouring out energy in an area where they can't eat. So they're very hungry as they go northbound.
Not only has the mother not eaten for months, but she has since given birth and nurtured her 2-ton baby, further draining her precious energy reserves. By 10:57, the attack on the weakened individuals was intensifying.
It just kept getting more frenzied and more frenzied.
Orcas hunt like wolves, in packs.
They were obviously in communication with each other in some way because they were just precision like a drill team. And they were all in a line, and when they'd come out of the water, they'd come out as one.
This coordinated hunting strategy was well known to marine biologists like Nancy Black. On that Mother's Day, Black too was out in the water in a different part of Monterey Bay. Flashback to 9:53. Just 4 minutes before Tiora first spotted fins in the water, Black was trailing a pod of killer whales.
When they're first searching for gray whales, sometimes the killer whales can be spread out over maybe 10 or more miles in the area. And then when one of the groups of killer whales locates a gray whale, then all of a sudden sometimes you'll see other killer whales just porpoising in from a distance.
Suddenly 2 killer whales appeared right in front of her. Then a third, then a fourth, then more. These animals were preparing for something. Black backed off. Everywhere Black looked, orcas were appearing. They were responding to some sort of signal. She could only presume that they had been alerted to a kill by other orcas somewhere in the bay.
So obviously they've heard this and listened for it, and there's not competition. It seems to be the killer whales are working together, and probably having extra help is an advantage.
Without warning, the orcas suddenly picked up speed and headed east. Black knew something special was up, and before speeding off to pick up assistance, she radioed her sightings to a colleague, Richard Turnillo.
Richard, they're up here at about 2 o'clock.
Turnillo's boat was 15 miles away with another group of tourists when the call came in. But having run natural history trips for 25 years, Turnillo knew that this was an extremely rare chance to see a killer whale attack at first hand.
Our other boat was whale watching, along with our research boat, and they had come across an attack. So they called us, and we went over and looked. I mean, it's, for a lot of people, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see one of the greatest predation events on Earth.
One passenger on board that day was local professional bird guide, Roger Wolfe.
We've been having a pretty good day. Everybody was real excited. And then the call comes in over the radio.
Hello? What's up?
Richard, they're up here at about 2 o'clock.
At 9:58, Turnillo changed course and headed for new coordinates. Even travelling at 13 knots, it would take him over 3/4 of an hour to get there. But the eyewitness reports from this boat were to prove invaluable.
We were quite a ways from the scene at that time. And we had to go under power for a good, half hour, 40 minutes in order to get to that location.
It was now exactly 56 minutes since Tiora's boat had first arrived on the scene.
And as we approached the scene, we could see lots of splashing off in the distance, a lot of thrashing and splashing from quite a ways off.
The attack had now been going on for over an hour. Wolfe began to decode what was happening in the sea ahead.
And the closer we got, then we began to see the dorsal fins of the killer whales, particularly the really 6-foot-tall dorsal of a male killer whale.
Less than 100 meters away now, Turnillo carefully maneuvered his larger boat closer to the carnage than Tiora had been prepared to risk. This footage from the day of the attack shows just how close eyewitness Roger Wolfe was to the battle scene. And from this angle, Wolfe was able to see something different. Supercharged headbutting.
For the most part, it seemed to consist of very intense body blows and headbutts. We would see the killer whales come in and hit the calf, and at the same time, we'd see their dorsal fin shake with the impact. And the blow out of their blowhole would be more intense upon impact.
This ramming was not just winding the calf. that was causing major internal damage. Dr. Frances Gulland is the Director of Veterinary Science at the Californian Marine Mammal Center. She knows from previous victim examinations just what sort of damage can be done.
When the orcas attack the grey whale calf, they actually ram the animal sort of again and again, repeatedly bumping into its side. And that type of aggressive ramming, blunt trauma, essentially breaks blood vessels, and the calves bleed into the subcutaneous tissue. So they bleed into the muscle and the blubber underneath the skin.
It was no wonder then that this mother was using every ounce of her strength and all of her wits in a supreme effort to protect her baby.
The mother was doing everything she can to absorb the blows and keep the calf away from the killer whales.
But how could one mother single-handedly keep the killer whales from taking her baby down? It's now 10:08, and Nancy Black has arrived with video equipment. The combination of video footage and close-up photographs was to prove crucial in the later analysis. By photographing the dorsal fins, Black hoped she would be able to identify the individual attackers. It was only later, when she was able to cross-reference these images with the fins already catalogued in her comprehensive database, that she was able to confirm the precise identity of the attackers.
We photograph the killer whales to identify the individuals. I always take a photograph just to document it.
As it turned out, she knew them well.
The ones that we saw that day, I can tell mostly because I know all the individuals now. So I know, I knew who those were.
Cross-referencing those individuals with her notes, Black confirmed that the attackers had been there in numbers.
That day there was quite a large group. There's about 12 killer whales, which is at least 2 family groups together.
She had seen these groups many times in the bay, but never before working in conjunction. By 11 o'clock, all 3 boats were now on site, each watching the heavyweight combat from different vantage points. By now, the tide had turned against the grey whale mother and calf.
At this point, the mother and calf grey whale are kind of just stopped there. They really can't get away now too quickly. The killer whales are blocking them from the front and from the sides. The mother could easily escape if she wanted to and just take off, but she doesn't do that. She stays very protective of her calf.
The mother attempts to get her calf out of harm's way by pushing it up out of the water and onto her belly.
You look over and you see the calf, and it looks like the calf is sitting on top of the water.
The Californian grey whale mother was attempting to balance 2 tons of infant on her underside.
The calf's rolled onto her chest, and she's rolled onto her back, and she's holding it up out of the water so the killer whales can't get to it.
But she can't sustain this position for long. Turned upside down, she must hold her breath, even whilst soaking up the power of the orca's heavy blows. This battling maternal drive is well known to environmental journalist Dick Russell.
Just imagine what this mother whale has to do in order to protect this young one. She's got to fight off this pack in whatever way she can with all the strength that she has. I mean, she weighs, 30 tons. So she's much bigger than an individual orca. But orcas are ferocious, and keep in mind that the gray whale has no teeth. She's a baleen whale. And there's a pack of wolves upon her and trying to get at the baby.
Killer whales are armed with a set of 50 ferocious teeth. especially adapted for ripping and tearing. Her calf is too big for the orcas to bite into her blubber. But from studying the carcasses of other grey whale victims, scientists knew that ultimately they were after something else.
The parts that are eaten first are the soft parts, the parts that are easy to pull off. The tongue is a very vulnerable piece. It's a nice, soft, fatty thing that they can rip off.
The orca's main prize is the protein-rich baby grey whale tongue. It's enough to make a meal for a family of 5. Dr. Francis Gulland has conducted necropsies on the dead bodies of many grey whale calves and had a good idea of the likely outcome.
What we expect to see in a grey whale calf after it's been attacked by an orca is a lot of bruising under the skin and into the blubber as a result of the orca actually ramming into the side of the calf.
But it's not the force of the ramming alone that damages the victim. It's the trauma.
As the orcas attack, that in itself could kill a grey whale calf due to the stress. And they're very sensitive to stress, and they'll produce a lot of adrenaline and corticosteroids. And those hormones can cause contraction of heart muscle, so that the animal actually has a heart attack and dies from heart failure. So the stress could kill the animal before the hemorrhages do.
On Mother's Day in Monterey Bay, it is now 11:19. The orcas are steadily wearing down the terrified calf. In desperation, the mother employs her only weapon, her massive tail.
She's actively thrashing about with her tail. In fact, we do see her land a few blows with her big tail flukes on the killer whale several times.
The tail flukes of a fully grown female grey whale are over 3 meters wide and can weigh 180 kilos.
In fact, we even see the calf make aggressive maneuvers, trying to slap it with the side of its head and using its flukes to try and slap the killer whales too.
But this flailing counterattack has little chance of success in the face of so many attackers. On Tiara's boat, Debbie DeBose noticed something new about the orca's behavior. Organization.
It was impossible for the mom and baby to make a getaway and run away. They were sort of corralled there and surrounded.
This is a coordinated attack strategy. Simultaneous attacks on a cow and calf from both sides at the same time.
You've got 3 of them on one side.
There was nowhere to turn, and the staggered formation strikes were taking their toll.
The mom was obviously getting tired, as was the baby.
From her inflatable, Nancy Black was trying to keep count of the fast-moving orcas.
You know, some of the killer whales are missing. They must be somewhere around here.
While 6 orcas maintained their assault, another 6 had disappeared from her view. From the perspective of the other 2 boats, their whereabouts soon became clear.
They separated into 2 groups and would actually circle around and come from 2 different sides to attack.
From where he was watching, Roger Wolfe saw a developing pattern of behavior.
There were 2 teams. One team would be in there actively just pounding the heck out of the whales. And the other team, the other killer whales would be off to the side, and we could see them. They were over there re-oxygenating, breathing, trying to recover until it was their turn to come back in.
The orcas had formed a tag team, ensuring there would be no let-up in the onslaught. What the witnesses were seeing firsthand was the clearest evidence yet of strategic intelligence. Going over the footage later, Nancy Black was able to confirm just how sophisticated the orca's behaviour was.
The killer whales are really coordinated. They're like a team working together. There's a lot of communication going on. And there's a killer whale right next to it. You can see its pectoral fin of the killer whales actually